Welcome to Space Drift. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The world learned of Australia's shocking pivot not through official channels, nor from a carefully worded press release or a diplomatic statement. Instead, the first tremors of this geopolitical earthquake were felt in the most unexpected way. Through the glare of a smartphone screen, as millions scrolled through their feeds in the early morning hours. The news broke not with calm analysis but via a furious all-caps tirade from Mar-a-Lago, the gilded Florida estate that had become the nerve center of post-election drama. Just past dawn, President-elect Trump's Truth Social post thundered across the internet. Sleepy Canberra has sold out to communist China. Australia, our so-called ally, is joining BRICS and using the Yuan. Sad. The message, raw and unfiltered, was instantly picked up by newsrooms and social media users worldwide, igniting a firestorm of speculation and disbelief. The post sent shockwaves through Washington, jolting policy advisors from their sleep. Phones rang in the pre-dawn darkness as officials scrambled to verify the claim, unsure if it was a misunderstanding, a hoax, or the beginning of a seismic shift in global alliances. For decades, Australia had been America's southern anchor in the Indo-Pacific, a loyal partner, a cornerstone of the Anglosphere, and a steadfast ally in times of crisis. The two nations shared intelligence, military bases, and a vision for a free and open Pacific. The idea of Canberra pivoting to BRICS, a bloc seen as a counterweight to US influence, seemed unthinkable. It was a move that would have been dismissed as fantasy just days before, yet now it was being discussed in hushed, urgent tones in the halls of power. As Australian officials remained silent, the unthinkable began to take shape as reality. Financial markets, always sensitive to uncertainty, panicked. The Australian dollar plummeted, the US dollar trembled, and investors worldwide braced for aftershocks. The global order, long taken for granted, suddenly seemed to crack. International news outlets scrambled to make sense of the chaos, while world leaders dialed one another in urgent private calls. For Trump, this was more than a policy setback. It was a personal affront, a challenge to his vision of American leadership, and a threat that could unravel the Western alliance he had promised to strengthen. His digital outburst marked not just a moment of anger but the start of a new uncertain chapter in international relations. The world was now watching, unsure of what would come next. As headlines blared and analysts debated, the world held its breath. A single nation's audacious move had thrown the future of the global order into question, and no one could predict how, or if, the pieces would ever fit together again. To grasp Australia's move, you need to understand BRICS+. Originally an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa, BRICS has become a political and economic coalition challenging Western dominance. Its new development bank offers alternatives to Western loans, and the bloc pushes for trade in local currencies, directly challenging the US dollar. With recent expansions, including Indonesia, UAE, and Iran, BRICS+ now represents nearly half the world's population and a larger share of global GDP than the G7. Despite internal rivalries, BRICS+ is united by a desire for greater autonomy and a rebalanced global system. Australia's identity has always been torn, geographically tied to Asia, yet separated by a vast ocean and centuries of history. Its unique position at the edge of the Asia-Pacific means it is both a neighbor to the world's most dynamic economies and a distant outpost of Western civilization. Culturally and politically, Australia has long looked to the West for its values, institutions, and alliances, drawing inspiration from Britain and the United States. Its legal system, language, and even its sporting traditions reflect this deep-rooted Western heritage. For decades, Canberra managed a delicate balancing act, cultivating lucrative economic ties with China, its largest trading partner, while relying on the United States for military protection and strategic reassurance. This dual approach brought years of prosperity and a sense of security. But as tensions between Washington and Beijing intensified, Australia found itself under growing pressure to pick a side. Moves like joining the AUKUS Security Pact, which promises advanced submarines and deeper defense cooperation with the US and UK, and calling for an independent investigation into the origins of COVID-19, deepened Australia's alignment with the US, but provoked a fierce backlash from China, resulting in harsh trade restrictions and economic retaliation. Australia's economy, heavily dependent on exporting resources like iron ore, coal, and agricultural products to China, and blessed with vast reserves of critical minerals essential for the technologies of tomorrow, was suddenly reminded of just how vulnerable it is to the shifting winds of global politics and the risks of over-reliance on a single market. The hypothetical idea of pivoting toward BRICS, aligning more closely with emerging powers like China, India, and Russia, would mark a dramatic departure from Australia's traditional alliances, gambling that new partnerships could bring greater economic opportunity, even at the risk of alienating the US and its allies. It's a high-stakes gamble, seeking prosperity through deeper integration with Asia's booming markets, or holding fast to the security and shared values offered by the West's enduring alliances. Australia's dilemma is more than a policy debate. It's the story of a nation navigating the crossfire of great power competition, searching for its place in a rapidly changing world. The most radical part of Australia's pivot, trading in the Chinese yuan. The US dollar has long dominated global commerce, granting America immense power. China, through BRICS Plus, has pushed to internationalize the yuan and build a parallel financial system. For Australia, trading with China in yuan could cut costs and simplify business, but the risks are huge. The yuan isn't fully convertible, and shifting away from the dollar would expose Australia to Beijing's opaque policies. Overhauling financial systems would be daunting, and Washington would see it as economic warfare. The move would be a bold leap into uncharted territory with global consequences. Australia's defection to BRICS Plus would send shockwaves through the world, upending decades of established alliances and power structures. This move would not just be a diplomatic headline, it would fundamentally alter the balance of global influence, signaling a dramatic shift in the international order. For the United States, it's a catastrophic blow, undermining its Indo-Pacific strategy and shattering alliances like AUKUS and Five Eyes. Washington would be forced to rethink its military posture and intelligence sharing, as trust among its closest partners would be deeply shaken. China, on the other hand, would claim a strategic victory, gaining not only access to Australia's vast resources, but also new political leverage on the world stage. Beijing would use this momentum to expand its influence, while the West's unity crumbles under pressure. Allies like Japan and South Korea would feel isolated. Their security calculations would be thrown into disarray, forcing them to reconsider their own diplomatic and defense strategies in a rapidly changing region. Europe, too, would question the durability of transatlantic ties, as confidence in the Western alliance system falters. European leaders would face mounting pressure to adapt to a world where old certainties no longer hold. The global order would fragment, with old loyalties replaced by hard-nosed calculations. Nations would scramble to secure their interests, forging new partnerships and alliances in a more unpredictable landscape. Markets would reel, the US dollar's safe haven status would erode, sending shockwaves through global finance as investors seek stability elsewhere. The Chinese yuan would gain ground, potentially accelerating the shift toward a multipolar currency system and challenging the dollar's dominance in international trade. Meanwhile, critical mineral prices would spike as nations race to secure supplies vital for technology and defense, intensifying competition over resources. BRICS Plus would gain unprecedented leverage over the green energy transition, challenging Western technological supremacy and reshaping the future of clean energy industries. The world would enter a new era of uncertainty and competition, where every nation must navigate a landscape defined by shifting alliances, economic upheaval, and the relentless pursuit of advantage. Inside Canberra, the decision to pivot would follow years of debate and a hard reckoning with reality. The government would argue that economic opportunities with BRICS Plus outweigh the risks of clinging to the past. Domestically, the move would be divisive. Some see pragmatism, others betrayal. Diplomats would scramble to reassure the US this isn't anti-American, while asserting independence within BRICS Plus. Regional relationships would be upended, forcing neighbors like New Zealand to choose sides. ASEAN nations might welcome Australia's new role, or fear rising tensions. Australia would need to convince the region its pivot is a chance for a more resilient, independent order. As of September 2025, Australia joining BRICS and adopting the yuan remains speculative fiction. The US-Australia alliance is deep, and the hurdles to such a pivot are immense. Yet the tension between economic dependence on China and security reliance on the US is real and growing. If US-China relations worsen or America turns inward, the unthinkable could become plausible. A global recession or dramatic policy shifts could force Australia's hand. This scenario is a cautionary tale. Alliances are not immutable, and the world is moving toward multipolarity. The rise of BRICS Plus shows nations want more options and autonomy. The coming decades will be defined by shifting allegiances and tough choices in a turbulent world.